Stage with Chris Graham.
Welcome. Chris Graham here on the podcast. Later in the show, we'll have Rod Mullins, and we'll talk about his big weekend this past weekend at the NHRA Thunder Valley Spring Nationals in Bristol. And Rod had a lot going on there with all the racing action. Still got some stuff still coming with some great sit-down interviews he was able to do. We'll also talk some NASCAR with Rod later in the show. But first, we'll start here with, we'll do a UVA sports roundup. A lot of stuff going on in the UVA sports world. It's still a lot of basketball for us to talk about. And before I get too far into this, I should mention self-plug, because somebody's got to do it, right? It's my job to plug myself as much as anything else. And I'm plugging myself and Jerry Ratcliffe. Our book, Team of Destiny Inside Virginia Basketball's Run to the 2019 National Championship, is now being delivered. I wish our post office here in Waynesboro was a little quicker getting things out, but that's the Postal Service for you. I guess that's why the Postal Service isn't doing that great, and hopefully they're not listening in and they'll slow down even further. But we've got the books are all there. They're just having trouble processing them all at once. We had so many orders. I guess we're very fortunate that we had, the great demand for the book that we've had, and so. But the individual orders are getting out to folks. The books are in bookstores. They're at the New Dominion bookstore in downtown Charlottesville, where Jerry and I will be doing a book signing this coming Saturday, June 22nd. Happens to be my birthday. Just by chance that worked out as far as the date, if you want to call it working out. It does for me. I love that it's going to be the book launch, the official book launch for Team of Destiny. Jerry and I will be there with cast of characters doing a talk and then a book signing, and just an honor to be able to do that there. I love that venue. Also, the books are available at the UVA bookstore on grounds. They're just outside of Newcomb Hall, and in both locations of Menser's in Charlottesville, both on the corner and in Stonefield. And so those books are out there. If you've ordered your copy and you haven't gotten it as you're listening to this podcast, it's on its way. Don't want to just throw the Postal Service out on the bus, but they are the Postal Service and they are taking their sweet time. I was getting ready to use a curse word. I probably should, but so that's coming up, and the book's coming out. I guess we've gotten some nice reviews so far from folks who've gotten their book and had a chance to read it. Been humbled by the reviews. I mean, I know we go into a project and you always want to do the best thing you can do, and we've seen some really, really nice reviews out there. So thank you for those who've done that. For those who are still waiting for your book to come, it's coming. And for those who've gotten and haven't had a chance to open it up, you've got some good reading to look forward to. I've read the book about 15 times, I think. When you write and edit a book, it takes forever to make sure that you didn't do something wrong. So that process, now you get to enjoy it. Again, if you're in town, if you're in Charlottesville, even if you got your copy of the book and maybe you just want Jerry and I to sign it, you just want to come and listen to us talk, maybe you want to heckle us, I don't know, if that floats your boat too. But we'll be there. It's Saturday night, June 22nd, 7 o'clock at the New Dominion Bookshop on the downtown mall in Charlottesville, and we'd love to see you. So please, if you're able to, that'd be awesome. So I've talked about how a lot of UVA sports here on the podcast. We'll finish up with Rod Mullins. But the UVA sports and it being basketball, I mean, we're 2 months and counting plus since the national championship win on a Monday night in April. But with 3 players all looking to hear their names called in Thursday night's NBA draft, we've been doing our part to try to keep up with the latest in terms of all the draft talk. And we had some audio. We joined on the press conference call with Coach Tony Bennett last week, and one of the questions asked by a reporter of Coach Bennett was, "What are you hearing about the draft?" And of course, even Coach Bennett, a former NBA player himself, national championship winning coach, multiple-time national coach of the year, had to say, "I don't know any more than you do." It's at this stage, it's all a crapshoot as to where guys are going to hear their names called, what teams will be in play. But we're trying to do our part. And so today I did an update looking specifically at Ty Jerome and where he would fit best in the NBA. So I think we'll start there with today's podcast. And with Ty, he's a guy that has an interesting placement in this draft, because we'll talk later about DeAndre Hunter, who's looked at as a top of the first round kind of guy. You're seeing his name anywhere really from 3 to 8. I don't know about 3, but I've seen some suggestions that he might go as high as 3. I don't think he jumps R.J. Barrett at the top of the draft, but it's possible, I suppose, if the Knicks are interested, the Knicks will take him at 3. But seeing 3 to 8, 3 to 9. Guys who are taken in that general area, I mean, that's the lottery area. Sometimes you see teams who are playoff teams. They'll have made a trade in previous years, and they'll get a pick in that slot. And so you can be a lottery pick and still end up on a playoff team. If you're Ty Jerome looks like more of a back end first round guy, roughly between 20 and 30. Well, guys who are picked later in the first round, yes, okay, you get paid a lot less, but you're in a situation where the team that's taking you almost certainly is a team that has had success. That's why they're picking you at the end of the first round of the draft. And I think Cleveland has a pick somewhere in that range, a pick that they made a trade with another team. So there is a possibility that you could hear your name called by a non-playoff team there. But by and large, you're in that range. You're fitting in with an existing playoff caliber team, and you're not going to be expected to go right in and start. Whereas if you're a lottery pick, yeah, you're probably expected to not only be a starter but a big contributor, probably right away. So there's a pressure there. With the guy picked later in the first round, going likely to a playoff caliber team, there's a different pressure. You're not going to be going in expected necessarily to start, even though we'll go through a few of these teams that look like the most likely landing spots for Ty Jerome, and at least one of them, he may have a chance to, maybe 2 spots actually, the way I analyze it, he may have a chance to go in and start for a team. But even if you don't, you're expected to be a rotation guy, but the different pressure is, okay, on the one hand, you're not expected to score 20 points a game necessarily for your team, but you are expected to contribute to a team that expects to play deep into May, maybe even into June. Different level of pressure. So looking at Ty Jerome, and I've spent a lot of time with all the 3 of the guys, Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, DeAndre Hunter. I've spent a lot of time trying to analyze where those 3 may end up, both in terms of selection number, but also then what team. And with Ty, I'm seeing, there, of course, anybody between 20 and 30 likely, if that's where he ends up. But I'm seeing 4 destinations that the mock draft folks, experts such as they are, seem to think he might be the best fits with: Philadelphia, Boston, Milwaukee, Golden State. So I thought what I would do today, and I did this on the website. You can go look for the more detailed information there. But I thought on the podcast I'd kind of go over my thoughts there. We'll start with Philadelphia. The Sixers, of course, is interesting. They actually played the eventual NBA champion Toronto the best. They took them 7 games, and you remember that ball bouncing around on the rim from Kawhi Leonard. It might still be bouncing. That went in to win Game 7. They then, go take the Eastern Conference Finals with Milwaukee in 6, and then beat the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals in 6. And so the Sixers were pretty close. I mean, you have to think, if they were that close, and I think going into that series, more folks thought Philadelphia was the better team going in. It was kind of approached as, well, the Sixers kind of underachieved by losing in the semifinals. And now you look at it and say they played the eventual champs the best. Now, you look at the roster, and I try to analyze each of the 4 teams' rosters that, again, we're seeing associated most with Ty Jerome. They've got Philadelphia may, especially now with Golden State being decimated by injury, Philadelphia may have the best starting 5 in the NBA heading into next season, assuming health stays where it is. You've got Ben Simmons, you've got Jimmy Butler, you've got J.J. Redick, Tobias Harris. You've, of course, got Joel Embiid as well. And so, yeah, you look at this team and you say, "Wow, how good is this team?" But then it's as isn't the case in any sport with a salary cap, if you have a lot of depth in your starting lineup, maybe you're a little thinner rotation wise, your bench and that kind of thing. The backup point guard on the depth chart heading into next season is T.J. McConnell, a 3-year pro, averaged 6.4 points a game in 19.3 minutes per game. But it would seem like the kind of situation where if Philadelphia were to call Ty Jerome's name, they would be doing so thinking Ty Jerome would walk in and be the backup point guard to Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons averaged 16.9 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.7 assists. He's a 6'10 point guard. You know about his unique skill set for a big guy. Doesn't make threes, though. Literally didn't make a three last year. 56.3% from the field, but not a three-point shooter. The three-point shooting largely falls on the heels, the shoulders, I guess we should say, of J.J. Redick. 13.4 points per game, 41.4% from three-point range this past season. But they're a team, Jimmy Butler's a drive and slash guy, and Joel Embiid actually as the 7'2", 7'3" center actually is a three-point hoister himself. 27.5 points per game, but actually shot in the mid-30s from three-point range this year. So it's a unique team. I mean, it's a big team, but again, a team that can use some depth. So, that would be a place where, of the four, that would be the place where Jerome, if he's taken by Philadelphia, is definitely going in knowing he's competing for a spot in the rotation, but probably as a backup. Next, I analyzed Boston, and it would be an interesting landing spot, as I decided after looking it over, because of this. I mean, Boston is a team, think about 2 years ago. I'm getting ready to say last season. Last season is now the season that just ended a week ago, or within a week of just now. But at the end of the season previous, 2017-2018, Kyrie Irving was injured in I think going into the playoffs or right in the first round of the playoffs, and that team ended up making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And you thought going into the season, wow, that young roster, they get Kyrie Irving back. That team's the sky's the limit for that team, and it turned out not to be. Kyrie Irving didn't mesh well with the rest of the group, and so Irving now. Is headed out, it seems, almost certainly headed out as free agent, probably to Brooklyn, it seems, from everything we're hearing, reading, whatever, from those who think they're in the know. So with Irving on his way out, you still have a nucleus. Jason Tatum, the former Duke product, the one and done from a few years ago from Duke, seems like he's going to be the building block of this franchise. A small forward position, Marcus Morris also in the front court. They're going to lose Al Horford. It seems Horford's going to take his ability to be an unrestricted free agent and go test the market. So he may sign with Boston, may not. But certainly they're losing their big guy in the middle. But you've got Tatum and Morris. You've got Jaylen Brown. I think the former Cal guard who we would have seen in JPJ a few years ago, and then Gordon Hayward, who slowly but surely made his way back from his devastating injury from 2017-2018. Career 15.1 points per game, scored 11.5 a game this year, but got better as the season went on, got more athletic as the season went on. So you've got a nucleus of four there. Now, what's interesting about that is the backup point guard, Terry Rozier. He's a 4-year pro, and the team ran pretty well when Rozier was the starting point guard in Irving's absence in the 2018 playoffs. But he's the point guard on the roster at this stage. So Jerome, if his name's called by Boston, he could very well go in there and have a chance to start. I mean, Rozier would you would think, knowing the system, Brad Stevens, the coach, he would know the system better. He's a 4-year pro. He would have an advantage going in. But you're taking a first-round flyer on a guy like Ty Jerome. You're thinking he's going to come in without an incumbent point guard. You want him to compete for that starting job. So that could be an interesting place, and that's a very young team, a young but successful team. Be interesting to see how that might work out if Ty's name ends up being called again by Boston. So the next team I looked at was Milwaukee, and I guess I should say these are all interesting, intriguing ideas. Just the idea now that trying to get down to the Milwaukee. No, this would not be a sort of reunification, even though they never played together at UVA, with former UVA star Malcolm Brogdon, 15.6 points a game, 50, 40, 90. One of those rare guys to shoot 50% plus from the field, 40% plus from three, and 90% plus from the free throw line. Brogdon is likely on his way out as a restricted free agent, but a guy that, because of the way Milwaukee is constructed roster-wise, salary cap-wise, it seems like the market for Brogdon is going to be 16, 17 million per season, and there's really no way for Milwaukee to work him into their budget with the way they're currently constructed roster-wise. So yeah, get that out of your mind. If Jerome's name is called by Milwaukee, he'll briefly be a roster mate of Malcolm Brogdon up until the free agency period starts in about a week and a half. But the fact that Brogdon is likely on his way out would be good news for a Ty Jerome if he were picked by Milwaukee, because it would open up a spot in the rotation in the backcourt. The existing point guard, at least roster-wise, I'll talk about that in a second, a guy named Eric Bledsoe, 15.9 points per game, 5.5 assists per game. He's the incumbent there. George Hill, the veteran, is the backup at the point. Malcolm Brogdon was also listed as a point guard on this roster. But it's really interesting when you talk about point guards with the way Milwaukee, Coach Mike Budenholzer runs the team not through their point guards, but through Giannis Antetokounmpo. The 6'11" power forward, though, he's the guy that whether he brings the ball up the court, he initiates the offense once the ball's up the court. And he often will bring the ball up the court, but Antetokounmpo is the guy that everything runs through. And in the expert way, I think that Budenholzer's built this team around him, and the great success they had this past season is Antetokounmpo is the guy that initiates, and we're told he can shoot the three well. He just hasn't translated that to game action quite yet. But 27.7 points, 5.9 assists per game as a 6'11" power forward. He's so good off the dribble that he's a tough guard when he gets the ball on the perimeter, even if you don't have to respect his three-point shooting. And you have to assume that eventually his ability to hit the three in shooting drills and practice situations is going to translate to on the floor in NBA games. And when that happens, the sky is really the limit for this guy. And he's already one of the top 3 or 4 guys in the NBA as it is right now. Just wait until those threes start falling. But the way this roster is constructed, kind of like how teams like to build around LeBron James. The Cleveland Cavaliers did this really well. The Miami Heat did it really well. You take advantage of the fact that really nobody can guard him one-on-one. So if you spread the floor with three-point shooters and make it hard for help to come, and if help does come, and then they're leaving a guy with nice spacing on offense that can hit the three, well, then that's how they're built. And think about Ty Jerome in that context. Ty Jerome's got range up to 30 feet. We all know that. Those listening to this podcast are UVA fans. You've watched Ty Jerome for 3 years. He's got range. And then you think about Malcolm Brogdon, the 50-40-90 guy, 42.6% from three-point range. A nice feature for these guys who help spread the floor for Giannis Antetokounmpo is they can also drive. They can also score off the dribble. They can penetrate and kick out for their open three-point shooters too. It's a really interesting offensive approach that Budenholzer has brought and instituted there in Milwaukee, and Jerome can certainly fit that mold too for Milwaukee. So I like the idea of Ty Jerome going to Milwaukee. I think it would work out really well for him. Now I'll say the fourth team that I'll analyze here, Golden State. This was my favorite spot. I'm selfish. To me, as many times as I've seen Ty Jerome's name associated with Golden State in this draft, this was the one I wanted him to go to because of the system in place. But I have to now concede the Klay Thompson injury has me a little worried, even though that could open up opportunity, at least for one season. Because I looked at this. What I was looking at is Sean Livingston, a guard who I think has a very similar profile as Jerome. Livingston is 6'7", Jerome 6'5", but they're both taller, skinny point guards who can touch the paint. Jerome is a better three-point shooter than Livingston, but I think that there's similarities in their profile. Well, Livingston he's been saying all season long that this is likely his last season in the NBA. I think this was his 15th year in the NBA, and you could tell he was diminished. But for the 15 minutes a game he gave you, he was quite the change-up from what you get when Steph Curry's on the floor. The freelancing Curry, pushing the pace, and then you get Livingston sort of, touching the paint with his feet and hitting that 12 to 15-foot mid-range jumper. And so, I felt like Jerome could step right in along with, as the backup to Curry and sort of the third guard in that rotation. Or maybe fourth guard if you count Iguodala, though. In their system, he's sort of a 3 more than he is a 2, and so I felt like Jerome could really work his way in there and kind of step into a role for a team that would be more reloading. We know they're losing Kevin Durant, for example. Well, now that Thompson, the torn ACL in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, the Warriors are going to re-sign him. That's just they have to. but he's not going to play likely at all next season. If he does play next season, it'll be February or March at the earliest. And I can't think. I mean, I tore an ACL years ago. It's not an easy, quick thing to come back from. So I look at it like Jerome, if he hears his name called by Golden State, all of a sudden it's Steph Curry and who else? Because if you re-sign Thompson, you're putting a lot of money into Thompson. He can't play for you next year. You're not going to be able to go out and sign someone else short term to sort of be the running mate for Steph Curry. You could maybe find a DeMarcus Cousins-like guy who wants to play for Golden State for a year for sort of a veteran's minimum. But when DeMarcus Cousins did that, he sort of did it thinking, well, one, I can rehab half the year, then two, play half a year and win a ring. Next year's Golden State Warriors aren't going to be a favorite at all. They might not even be a playoff team with the roster they'll trot out there, with the salary cap restrictions they'll have, with Klay Thompson eating up a lot of money, but not being able to play, with Steph Curry making max contract money. Next year's Golden State team is going to be a team in flux. Now, certainly 2020, 2021, I think that's a team that, again, when Thompson's back healthy, you've got that nucleus back of Curry, Thompson, Draymond Green, and whoever they draft in the first round this year, whoever they would draft in the first round next year. Maybe they re-sign DeMarcus Cousins. I don't know. I think Cousins showed enough before his second injury. He had the torn Achilles in New Orleans last year. He rehabbed from that. He scored 16.3 points a game when he finally got back in the mix with Golden State. Then he got injured again in the first round of the playoffs. Came back in the finals. Kind of so-so in the finals, but you got to give the guy credit for playing hurt. And he did. He was a key guy in their game to win. But I would think that if I'm DeMarcus Cousins, I'm commanding some top dollar. He's a guy that when he's fully healthy, he's a top 10, top 15 talent at least in the NBA. So he's not going to be signing for $5 million to play another year in Golden State. He's going to be talking about some big money long-term deals. So if Jerome's name is called, he might get a chance to be sort of a running mate for a year, obviously for just a year, but he might have a chance to be a sort of 1 year key player for Golden State as they try to piece together a roster that can at least get back to the playoffs. And it would be interesting to see, he and Curry on the court at the same time. Maybe that would allow Curry to kind of free himself up, play the more Klay Thompson role on offense, kind of running around, getting open and off screens and being the knockdown guy, and let Ty be more of a creator. But that could be an interesting place for him too, though. I would think that, long term, the best fit may be Boston. Again, I was, when I'm rooting for my guys here, right? So for the longest time, I was rooting for it to be Golden State, and now I'm looking at it and saying, I kind of want him to end up in Boston because that's a team he can grow with, and that's a team that he could be a big part of, and may even get a chance to go in and start, not just for 1 year, filling in for a guy who's hurt, but maybe long term. So that would be an interesting place for our guy to go there. And so now I want to switch gears if I can get my computer to cooperate. And I'm starting to think that this computer just does not like me. My podcast studio computer locks up a good bit. So I want to now go. Let's talk some Kyle Guy. So we'll talk about DeAndre Hunter here to finish up this part of the podcast. But so we'll talk about DeAndre at top of the draft guy. If, again, we can get our computer to work with us here, this would be really nice. So I want to click on the story I did on Kyle. And let's see if I can get some help from technology here. So Kyle, we talked on a podcast last week, I believe, and you might have heard in my voice a little bit of depressed nature of myself because Kyle leaving school, staying in the draft, and we weren't seeing his name anywhere on mock draft boards. Good news, he's back on some big boards. In fact, I found three. NBADraft.net, DraftTech.com, Tankathon.com. Now, which of these is the best? Which of these knows anything? I'll go back to what Tony Bennett said last week. Nobody knows anything. Okay, that's it. NBADraft.net, we got to love these folks. They have him going as a 45th pick. And DraftTech.com has him at 49, and Tankathon.com has him at 56 or 60 picks overall in the 2 rounds, 30 each round. So there's 3 that have him going. Now, there's several that don't have him going. in the draft. ESPN insider Jonathan Givony has him only as the number 95 prospect on his best available board. There's 95 would put you way out of the draft. CBS Sports, its big board, has him at 80. The NBA draft room on the bubble list has him as the 24th guy off the bubble. So he wouldn't be first 4 out or second 4 out. He'd be about the 6th 4 out. So there's a divergence of opinion, let's just say. Anywhere from the 45th pick to being way, way, way out of the draft. It only takes one team to call your name. That's the thing that we have to remember here. And you're not going to hear me analyze Kyle and what team would be the best fit because, selfishly now we're rooting for Ty to get the ideal landing spot. We're rooting for Kyle just to hear his name called because if his name's not called, we've talked about this before, but you got to work your way into the league then through a summer league team. You got to earn a fall camp invite. You got to play your ass off there, and probably still. I mean, that's the process that London Parentes went through, and hasn't worked out for him. So, so we're hoping we hear Kyle's name called, but it is great to hear that there are some folks who think that he will. So that's the update there. I mean, the good news is, if you want to call it the good news is that Kyle at least is getting some love, as a guy who will hear his name called. And we're going to be covering the draft, by the way, on Thursday night. When I say covering the draft, I'm listening for 3 names to be called, and I'm going to be watching, what would that be, 3.5 hours of TV to hear 3 names called, and then write about them. And we're hopeful that we'll have access. I don't know if UVA will do this or the NBA teams will do this, but I'll be watching my email inbox for those opportunities to jump on conference calls with these young men when they hear their name called and they're being introduced to the local media for their NBA team. We're going to try to jump on those calls, get the response from the players. And so it'll be a fun night because, hey, when we won a championship 2 months ago, and I say we, I got a tattoo on my shoulder, I got a degree on my wall, I'm a UVA guy, I'm a we. You're a we too. You listen to this podcast, you read my stuff. You cried when we won the national championship a couple months ago. You lived and died this team for years. You're a we. But we're going to be covering this, rooting for our guys, and then we're going to. So this will be like another. It's going to be like another championship night. I mean, 2 guys in the first round, maybe 3 guys in the draft. This will be a great night for UVA basketball. So we're going to be covering as much as we can Thursday night. I got to make sure to get my proper rest because it might be a late night for me. No night will be as late as championship game night. That day started. I'm reminiscing now for a second as I get ready to break down DeAndre Hunter and where he may end up. Championship day started for me. I don't know if I've ever told the story. Maybe I have on a podcast, but I don't remember. Championship day started for me that Monday. My wife says, hey, I just got this notice that UVA President Jim Ryan is going to be doing a Run with Jim event there at US Bank Stadium. You want to run with Jim? And, of course, I'm a distance runner. Yes, I want to run with Jim. Oh, it's at 7:30 a.m., of course. And so got out there, 7:15. I'm stretching, warming up. 130 of us went for this run through downtown Minneapolis. We ran over the Mississippi River a couple of times. Awesome experience, but that meant my day started at 7. Well, the run started at 7:30 a.m. I had to get up about 6 to get there, and get all ready. Eat enough to run 4 miles and that kind of thing. And so the game ended for you guys on the East Coast at about 11:30. It was still 10:30 local time out there in Minneapolis. I got on a train. So the game ended 10:30 our local time. Of course, we're doing interviews with players, videos, everything else we can do. I think I finally left the arena around 1. Then I had to start working. I saw the sunrise the next morning in Minneapolis, about 6:30 a.m. ish or so, that Central Time. I don't know if the sun was rising or the sky was just lightning because the sun was getting ready to rise. Anyway, at the age of 46, staying up more than 24 hours, not advised. But except for the fact that it was championship day, what an awesome day that was. So I won't quite have that same day coming on Thursday, but it's a special day coming up for UVA basketball fans. So we'll do our part to help chronicle it as much as possible. So let's talk about DeAndre Hunter here as we wrap up this portion of our podcast. DeAndre Hunter, I had written a column a few weeks ago suggesting that he would be a perfect fit for the LA Lakers at the number 4 spot. Well, the LA Lakers, of course, you may have heard the news. And unless you've been under a rock, and that rock also does not have access to any form of ESPN, be it TV, radio, internet, I guess they still, for the next couple months, publish a magazine. You know that the Lakers made a trade to pair Anthony Davis along with LeBron James, but they had to trade everybody they know except for LeBron James to get him, including the number 4 pick. So the Lakers are out of the DeAndre Hunter sweepstakes. They've got 2 players. I think they've got 5 players under contract for next year, so it's going to be fun to see how they flesh that roster out. But that's their problem now. Our problem is figuring out where DeAndre Hunter fits in best. New Orleans has that number 4 pick. New Orleans also has a number 1 pick. Then you might have heard there's a guy named Zion Williamson coming out this year who might just fit that number 1 pick slot for New Orleans. I'm suggesting that wouldn't it be interesting to see DeAndre Hunter as the number 4? I'm thinking it's the best situation. Again, I'm rooting for our guys to get the best situation. The best for Kyle Guy is just to hear your name called Thursday night sometime. If you hear your name called, you're in the NBA next year. Almost guaranteed. I mean, you're not guaranteed 100%, but you're 99% you're going to be in the NBA next year. Ty Jerome, I want him to end up either in Boston or Golden State because I think he's got a chance to start in either of those 2 places. And I'm leaning towards Boston because of the long-term potential he has to maybe be the starter there for years in the future. Now look at this situation. I look at New Orleans and how they're rebuilding with getting rid of Anthony Davis and trading for the number 4 pick and now having 2 of the top 4 picks in this draft. Now, definitely they could trade that 4 pick and try to turn that into something else, turn it into a more veteran player. But if you're asking me, you're trading Anthony Davis because you're expecting to rebuild young. Now, it looks like Williamson's going 1. I'm going out on a limb there. He's going 1. It looks like then, this is where we can say looks like. It looks like John Morant's probably going 2, and then I'm thinking R.J. Barrett at 3 to New York. Memphis has a 2 pick, John Morant. I'm thinking New York Knicks take R.J. Barrett at 3. I happen to think R.J. Barrett's the best player in this draft. I think you'll see that down the line. But so I can't see him falling further than 3. Michael Jordan went 3 once. I'll just say that much. 4. So which direction do you go? Best available, some people are suggesting at the 4, assuming those first 3 guys go in whatever order they go, that the best available at 4 would be a guy named Darius Garland, who you don't know about because you didn't see him play because I think he played 5 games at Vanderbilt and got injured. But a lot of folks are suggesting, those who have seen him play, and good for you that you did because the rest of us didn't get to, but there's a lot of suggestions he's the best available. But New Orleans doesn't really need a point guard. I mean, to say the least, doesn't need a point guard. The incumbent starter is a guy named Drew Holiday, coming off a career year, 21.2 points a game, 7.7 assists a game, 47.2% shooting. You don't need him. And then not only do you not need him, you don't need Darius Garland or Kobe White, the point guard from North Carolina, who a lot of folks are talking about being a top 5 talent. So you got Drew Holiday. You've also got in this trade with the Lakers, you picked up Lonzo Ball. Now, again, you could spin him off and turn him into something else. But I'm kind of intrigued, if I'm looking at New Orleans' chances here, of a Drew Holiday, Lonzo Ball backcourt. A big backcourt, Ball 6'6", Holiday 6'4". They can both handle. Maybe Ball ends up being your primary ball handler. He's not the best shooter of the bunch, certainly, but he's a big guy who can create. And that backcourt would be interesting. And then I used in my column about this, I said the Pelicans also fleeced the Lakers for 6'9" small forward Brandon Ingram. You might remember him from Duke, 18.3 points per game last year, sort of his breakout season. I was high on Ingram when he came out. His rookie year, he struggled. Shot 49.7% from the floor last year. I like Ingram. As a 6'9" small forward, this lineup. Then you've got ensconced, I assume, Jahlil Okafor, another former Duke. Yeah, if you have Williams, you got 3 Dukies in this lineup now. But Jahlil Okafor, 58.6% from the field, 8.2 points, 4.7 rebounds. I liked him out of college too. The NBA is getting away from back to the basket scorers, and that's what he is. But so you've got 4 of your 5 there. Your rotation guys would include Josh Hart, also from the Lakers, 6'5" guard, shot 40.7% from the field, 8 points a game, just under 8 points a game. And Darius Miller, a 6'8" forward who's a holdover. So you put Hunter in this lineup, and if you put Hunter in this lineup, one, what I like if Hunter's part of this mix, you've got Drew Holiday, you've got Lonzo Ball penetrating like mugs. You're going to need somebody to hit that open three when they penetrate, draw attention from defenders, and with the help being needed. We all know DeAndre Hunter can hit the three as a 6'7" guard forward. He can also score. He can hit the mid-range shots, definitely. He can score back to the basket if you put a smaller guy on him. But primarily he'll be a 3-and-D guy in the NBA. He can hit the three, and we know he can play D. And you think about this team defensively then, 1 to 4, if Hunter is in that mix. You got 6'6" Lonzo Ball, 6'4" Drew Holiday, 6'9" Brandon Ingram, and the 6'7" Hunter, and then a rim protector and 6'11" Jahlil Okafor. I like that group defensively. And of course, I haven't even thrown in Williamson at 6'7". Maybe Hunter comes off the bench. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here that can make this team really good. So, Hunter maybe even goes there and is the first. He's the sixth man. He's used to that role. He's played that role for UVA. So, boy, I like this team. And if that ends up being the case, it's a young team that can grow together. That's my analysis there. I mean, I haven't looked any further. I'm kind of picking and choosing my spots here, but you could look at other teams. Cleveland is at number 5. I don't know that he falls any further than Cleveland. If he falls past New Orleans at the 4 spot, I don't know that he goes too much further. I have seen some mock drafts have him going all the way. I think it's number 9 to Washington. God forbid. Washington is such a train wreck right now with all the money tied into John Wall, who's injured. We may never see John Wall be anything close to the John Wall we thought we saw a couple years ago. So I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, much less somebody like DeAndre Hunter I want to see succeed. But again, we'll be following this very closely as draft night unfolds on Thursday night, and we're going to try to jump on some conference calls, and we're going to try to make some sense of it all. Do some roster analysis as these picks come in. So coming up after this break, we're going to talk with Rod Mullins. We're going to talk NHRA, some NASCAR, and more. That's coming up after our break. And we're back on the podcast, and I'll be joined now by Rod Mullins, and we're going to cover quite a few things. We're going to start with NHRA Thunder Valley Spring Nationals in Bristol. Rod had a busy weekend keeping up with all the goings-on there at the track. And Rod, give us a rundown here. How did things go down, and any surprises in the action this past weekend?
Oh, it was a great weekend, Chris, no doubt about it. Having a chance for the NHRA stars to come into Bristol and have a chance to try to decide who was going to win at least the championship part of it there in Thunder Valley. It's just a great experience altogether. Coming into this whole thing, we were looking at John Force. John Force Racing has been an iconic character in the sport for the last 40 years. And he was looking for a big win this past weekend. He was looking for win number 150. And he would like nothing more than to have picked up a big win on Father's Day, and especially pick up a win in front of the home crowd at Bristol. Now, he's been successful at just about every track that he has participated on, and Bristol, no exception. And I had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and also his daughter, Brittany. Brittany was sporting special colors this past weekend for her dad, and that was the logo that they used to have for Brute Force Racing, which dated back to the inception of the John Force Racing program back probably about the late 70s. And they were talking about, how much Bristol meant to them, and what kind of image and what kind of feelings that they had when they always came to Bristol, that it was always just such a great place to just come and watch just a a ton of racing, and all of these different cars compete on the track there. But what we ended up happening was John Force and Brittany Force, they didn't end up making it to the championship and winning. John Force came up just shy in the final run with Bob Tasker the third. Although they had raced previously in one of the heat races to decide the way the brackets would end up on Sunday, it ended up Bob Tasker and the Ford Photographs, the Shelby Mustang. They were the ones that ended up taking a big win for themselves. It was their first win in almost 2 years. They came on the scene back in 2015, thought they were going to do really well on Sunday, and they did. And then on the other hand, Brittany Force, she did not make it in the Top Fuel Dragster. As a matter of fact, she went out in the first round. They had some issues there, and lo and behold, before it was all over with, Mike Salinas out of San Jose, California, came away with a big win, and he pretty much dedicated this win this past weekend to his father, who is currently suffering from, I would take it to be Alzheimer's or dementia, but he's sitting there, he's watching things on television, and he is also named Mike Salinas, and so the younger Salinas ended up winning, and just about every time Mike Salinas was talking about his father, he talked about the main thing, and that was, when Dad is watching the television and sees me competing on there, he says, that's me, or that was him. He's winning a race, or he's doing well. And this was Salinas' second win on the season, and it's setting up a big championship run here at the midway point in the NHRA season. I just had a ball this past weekend. I got to enjoy sitting down, like I said, with John Force, Brittany Force. I also had a chance to sit down and talk with Robert Hike, and also Anton Prock, who's the other driver for John Force Racing. And so, there's a lot of great racers right there. It's just a fantastic experience at Bristol when they come to Thunder Valley. And it also gave me, I think, a little bit of a different perspective this year as opposed to previous years, because I got a chance to see the popularity that NHRA generates as they go around in different towns and different communities around the United States. And it's almost something that I looked at from a point of view that NASCAR, I think, is lacking in some respects. It's just, fans are a little bit more involved with the sport itself. They have a chance to do that morning walk on Sunday morning down the track. It's always a ritual at every track they go to. They go down one lane of the track, and then they turn around and come back. They have breakfast. I mean, this is just a fantastic experience for the fans in general, anywhere you go.
That's great to hear. I was going to ask about the fan experience, and sports definitely do well that they keep their fans involved like that. And one thing I was going to ask about too, we were talking after our podcast last week. We kept chatting for a few minutes, and one thing you told me about was just how unique the sound is there. When you hear the term Thunder Valley, you can maybe think, oh, that's just a marketing ploy. But you were telling me just because the unique situation of where that track is, just how loud it gets. Talk about that if you could.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle of the mountains right through there, and it's a valley, and it runs through there just in that little gap. If you were to get on Google Maps or something, or Google Earth, and see the track from see the NASCAR track, at least you'll see that it's kind of in an opening, and then it kind of goes back through there, and then, as we call it back in Southwest Virginia, or at least in this part of the country, it goes back into a holler, as we call it, and it goes back through there. And once that sound gets through there, and the way that Bruton Smith, and I should have to give credit also, Larry Carrier, who's the founder of the track, and then Bruton Smith improved on it a little bit more. When they cut the track through that mountain back through there and that gap, it just created this unique experience being between these two hillsides, two mountains, and when the sound vibrates and it comes through there, I mean, it's an experience like nobody else will ever have. As a matter of fact, from the first time that I was able to go and shoot photographs from down on the track right there, the first year that I covered it, that's been almost 3 years ago, until This past weekend, when I had a chance to be down there once again, I couldn't believe how much things had changed. When the top fuel dragsters and also the funny cars got out there on the track, oh my gosh, I'm literally being pushed backwards by the sound. And also you've got the nitro that's thrown in there too for the effect also, and being able to get that speed. They have to have that burst in order to take off down through there at Thunder Valley. I'm standing there with the camera, and I'm literally pushed back. Now, people up in the stands, they don't get that same effect, except they get the sound of man alive. It's just an incredible experience, and the sound there. You've got to be prepared with your ears. If you don't have, for some people they may have just the regular earplugs and they can handle it, but I've got a problem with one of my ears, and one of the problems that I have is I can't stand a lot of sound with it. And so I've got these big, heavy-duty sound canceling kind of headphones, sort of like what you wear when you go to a shooting range or something. And I'm telling you, it still pushed me back after this past weekend. It's just an incredible experience.
Well, for our listeners out there, if you want to go back and read Rod's stories, go to our sports section on Augusta Free Press, and you'll see Rod's great coverage from this past weekend of the Thunder Valley Spring Nationals. So now let's switch gears. Let's talk about something that hadn't happened in quite a long time in NASCAR, and this specifically in the Truck Series. Ross Chastain wins a race and is disqualified. First time in, almost 60 years, Rod. Take us into what happened and how he got disqualified.
Well, they went to they had their truck race this past weekend, and I think what surprised a lot of people was we've been talking about this. We kind of had a little discussion saying, how long will it be before someone gets eliminated out of this, either winning a race or something like that they'll get eliminated, and it'll be because of a rules infraction there at the end of the race. And Ross Chastain, he's been looking for a ride all year. He ended up some of the funding that he was supposed to have for one of his rides in the Xfinity Series. It dried up. It did not show up like it was supposed to. And then the next thing that ends up happening, here he is, and he goes immediately to the Truck Series. And when he went into the Truck Series, he got in there, and the first thing, started dominating, started doing some great racing and so forth. But I think really what got me out of this whole thing was that they did it for the Truck Series, and it's almost like it's speaking volumes of, okay, try us and see what happens. We kind of threw this out at you. And so for the first time, NASCAR instituted a rule before this season that if a vehicle did not meet any kind of specifications following inspection of the race, they would disqualify it, and that is what ended up happening. Chastain ended up, there was some minor damage during the event on the truck. According to the team owner, Al Dean, he said it left the truck too low following the race, and they ran that part through an inspection, found it was in the section 14.6F of the rule book of NASCAR that states in a race disqualification appeal, the decision of the panelists, which could be an appeals panelist, his or her alternate, under Section 14, appeals to the National Stock Car Racing Appeals Panel, and that's what they ended up doing. And so the managing director of the Gander Outdoor Truck Series said after the race that they have procedures and rules in place. Trucks are restricted on their ride heights, the front and the rear of the vehicles, and unfortunately, for Ross Chastain's truck, the 44 was low on the front, and in his words, extremely low. So they end up having a process that they go through at that point. And at the end of the race, Chastain was disqualified. He was not allowed to win. And Brett Moffitt came in, and he's the one that is awarded the win after that. And he also got the $50,000 bonus for winning a triple truck challenge race this past weekend. And so it was a big win in not a very nice way, I guess, for Brett Moffitt. But Ross Chastain definitely, it hurt him. And it hurt him in the pocketbook in a number of ways.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any other penalties associated with this? Certainly losing the race, losing the money, and everything else. But are there other penalties in addition to those substantial ones?
Well, according with that, the disqualification out of it, that's what they did. They listed him as finishing 32nd for the race, receives last place points, 5 instead of the 60 that he would have gotten. And as a matter of fact, he loses all the points and the playoff points he would have gotten for that win, loses the stage and playoff points for winning both stages. And sometimes they'll have a hearing, and sometimes they'll knock him out so many points. But losing a win like this, that's enough pain in the pocketbook right there. Now he only had 43 points in the Truck Series, and he was 69 points behind another driver, Josh Ram, who is 20th in season standings. And so he took a hit there. I think he took one of the biggest hits he could have possibly taken out of this. And also to kind of combine that together with the pocketbook and not winning that purse after the race, I think that's a big deal.
Big deal indeed. Well, let's get ready. This weekend, NASCAR heads back to Sonoma. So get us ready for the weekend of racing at Sonoma.
Sonoma is going to be the first time they've been on a road course this season. They always go out west for the California swing for a second time, so to speak. Usually they're in Riverside, or not Riverside, but in Fontana, California for the first race, which is usually on an oval. But this one goes back out to Sonoma, out to wine country. And this weekend, no exception, this will be a big test for some of these drivers, especially out on the circuit there at Sonoma, because from what I understand this weekend, Sonoma is going to open up the full course this time around. They have been kind of limiting the way the course has been ran over the last few years when they've gone out to race in California. But this time around, they're going to open up the full course, and when they open up the full course, it's going to definitely open some eyes, I guess, with some of the drivers, because even though they've been on that course and they know how it goes, especially when they get in racing condition, it'll be a different story. But there's going to be a lot of different drivers this time around that could be in contention for this win at Sonoma, because you've got a lot of people that love the road courses. The Busch brothers, Kurt and Kyle, they love being able to race down in there. Then you've got people like Bubba Wallace. He likes a road course too, likes to run on the road course, has done pretty good sometimes on some of his past runs in the circuit. And then you also have some other drivers that really like to race out there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he likes a road course. Denny Hamlin has done well out on the road course before. And also you can't leave out Joey Logano out of that bunch. Jimmy Johnson pretty much raced on road courses out in the California area there, especially from Southern California up through Central California. He loves a road course. So you got so many of these drivers. Hendrick Motorsports has also had a focus on some of the younger drivers. William Byron likes them as well. Alex Bowman has done well. So you've got a kind of an open house sort of thing as to who's going to be really in contention for one of these races. I know Ryan Newman is another good one. And speaking of Ryan Newman and Roush Fenway Racing, Ricky Stenhouse is going to be paying tribute to Darrell Waltrip this weekend. He's going to be driving one of the NASCAR Hall of Famers, Darrell Waltrip's old paint schemes in the Cup Series at Sonoma this coming weekend. If some of you remember the old Western Auto look, had the Mylar and the almost reflective numbers on the side for the 17 car when Darrell was racing on the circuit. They have pretty much brought the paint scheme back in salute to Darrell Waltrip, as it will be his last for Fox Sports NASCAR coverage. He's retiring after 18 years in broadcast booth, and that will be this coming weekend. So, according to Jack Roush, the team owner, Darrell Waltrip's done a great deal to the sport as a competitor and a member of the broadcast media. The thing that stands out to him about Darrell Waltrip is that just after he announced he was starting the team with Mark Martin, he was invited to a driver's meeting that season, and Darrell Waltrip was one of the first to welcome him into the fold and say, "Come on in, Jack. We'll have a lot of fun with you," and we sure have over the years. And so it'll be a little bit of a fun time for some people going to Sonoma, but it's going to be a sad time, especially since Darrell Waltrip would be in the press box for the last time. But then there are also some people that probably be cheering and saying, "Yay, Waltrip's getting out of the press box. We don't have to worry about it another year." I know that's the way some people deal all the way around. But you cannot deny what Darrell Waltrip has done to the sport and what he has done all around for NASCAR. Yeah, he's been outspoken sometimes. He's definitely ruffled some feathers, and I think, when you ruffle Richard Petty's feathers, and Darrell Waltrip put it one time, and you see that long finger coming at you, and it can curve around the wall, even though you're hiding behind that wall trying to get away from the king, and that long bony finger coming around and pointing at you, you know you've done something wrong. So there's going to be a lot of reminiscing this coming weekend, especially with Darrell Waltrip and so forth going on in Sonoma.
I love Darrell Waltrip. I think he's good for the sport, and I know he's controversial, but I think controversial is not bad for NASCAR. But anyway, that's a big weekend for Darrell, and a big weekend coming up in Sonoma. And thanks, Rod, for walking us through it, and we look forward to talking with you again next week.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.
All right, and thanks to our listeners for joining us here on the podcast. And if you've got any questions, anything else you want us to address, just email me at AugustaFreePress2@gmail.com, and we'll talk about it next week. Well, thanks again for listening, and have a great week, everybody.